Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. We're going to talk about how I managed to win the Silk Road mountain race, a 1900-kilometer long bikepacking race in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan for a third time. But first of all, I would like to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Tater Boost. Tater Boost is a savory trail mash for endurance athlete. It comes in the shape of a powder and you just open up that little packet. What you need to do is just to add either cold or warm water. In the case of endurance racing, obviously it will be cold water. It's going to be 300 calories for 70 grams. It's actually pretty good. Made only from natural ingredients. Potato flour, tapioca starch, coconut milk powder. Nothing weird in there. That nice and savory, salty food that you want, especially in a country in Kyrgyzstan where they seem like they expect you to survive only on candy bars. Silk Road Mountain Race 2023 started pretty much the worst way possible. After 30 minutes on the course, I dropped my phone. I took it out of my back pocket, went to airplane mode, wanted to put it back into the back pocket. There I dropped it, picked it up. The screen was not only shattered, it was not working at all anymore. And so at that point, I knew I would have to spend the whole race without a phone. But that was not the worst part. An hour into the race, there was a little lead group of maybe 10 people, and I was in that lead group. There was a massive pothole. I saw it last minute, and I hit it straight up, crashed really hard on my side, pretty much the whole side of my body, not only the elbow and the wrist, but also the hip and the legs and the feet everywhere. It took me about 15 minutes to clean my wounds. Also, my derailleur hanger was broken, so I had to change it. Luckily, I had a spare. Well, not luckily. It's something that you need to do. You need to travel with the spare derailleur hanger. But yeah, it was a bad start to the race. Nevertheless, got back on the bike, pushed not too hard at first. Since it was a big, like high-speed crash, I could feel that I was all shook up. Slowly, I started catching people. Obviously, the meat pack first. I want to thank everyone who inquired about my health because they'd seen me standing on the side of the road all bloodied and bruised. Even met my good friend Alan, who was racing this on a cargo bike, and he gave me a big hug, which definitely lifted my spirits. The legs were feeling better and better, but generally the shock that crash sent through my body, it took me a really long time to shake it up. I wasn't feeling well. I was actually wondering if I hit my head, if I was concussed, because I had sort of a bit of a headache, whatever. I was not sure if I was going to be able to go past checkpoint 1. I made it to checkpoint 1 in 7th position. If I made it this far, it's 220 kilometers, and I was still feeling not in the best shape of my life, but rather okay and still catching people, then it meant that I was good to go. That first night, it was the first high climb of the race at 3,800 meters of altitude, and it was freezing cold and raining, and I was feeling really weak, both from the high altitude and, again, the shock. I was definitely extremely tired, much more tired than I would have been on a normal first day of an ultra. I felt like it was the 5th night or more than the first. I was contemplating actually stopping to sleep somewhere. Then I couldn't find any place and it was raining, and I was also kind of thinking that, you know, I lost enough time with that crash. The mission was still to go and win that race. So I decided that even if I felt super tired and a little bit sleepy, I would try and ride through that night, which I managed to do. And in the morning, I was in Saru, having ridden 425 kilometers in a bit less than 24 hours. That was a fairly fast start for this race. There was no like major thing that would really slow, like no hike a bike, not a ton of elevation, no broken roads. So, but that's where the actual real Silk Road mountain race started for me. The bottom of a valley that is called Juku. So that's where I was in the morning around 7:45. I had no idea of my positioning because I had no phone, so I couldn't check the tracker. I resupplied, headed up to Juku. That's a long climb because you start at the lake Issyk-Kul, around 1800 meters of altitude, and you go all the way up there to the Arabel plateau, which is 3,900 meters. I was feeling that day, I was feeling much better, and I was feeling my true self, lingering effect of the fact that I took that major fall. I was just happy that I was racing and I was still in contention going up that beautiful valley that is Juku. The top of Juku is a really hard hike bike. It takes about an hour and a half to clear it to get up there. And then afterwards you're about to get to the Arabel plateau. You get some more hiking to do. There is this pretty steep slope that is only grass. There's no track there to get to the Arabel plateau. So it's pretty hard to navigate. And then I got up to the Arabel plateau and it was super windy. One of the worst headwind that you can imagine. It's a bit of a shame because it's one of the few good roads, good gravel roads that you will find on this course. Still managed to get to the top of Arabel and then started descending to a place that is called the Valley of the River Burhan. It is one of my favorite places on the course. It's just absolutely magnificent there. I was really, really happy that I was there. It was just a shame that it was a headwind for all of that valley. And that valley is where you're gonna get the most river crossings. And I knew that from previous years, so I didn't even try to keep my feet dry. I just went all the way, all the river crossings, didn't care. I was hoping to find a place a shelter, some sort of shelter to sleep for that night after that bridge, because I remembered that there was some buildings there. I checked the building, which seemed to be abandoned, but everything was locked. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna mess up with some things that are locked. If it's not abandoned, I'm not gonna get in there. So I kept going. I made it to a village called Oruktam, and then I found a school there, and I decided just to camp behind that school. I went to bed and I couldn't sleep for some reason. I was in sort of semi-sleep state for 2-3 hours. Again, I didn't have a phone. So the way it worked out is that I went to bed around 1 or 2 a.m. and I knew that as soon as the sun would start rising, then it would mean that it would be time to go, because that would make around 4 hours stop and maybe 3 hours in the sleeping bag, and maybe 1 hour of sleep, but this is the way it is. I left to get to Narin, also known as Scratch City, one of the bigger towns on the course, and a place where a lot of people that struggled with the Silk Road Mountain Race decide to stop and drop out. I was kind of wondering if I should stop and buy a phone, but not knowing what my position was and not knowing how far ahead or behind the other rider was, I didn't know if I had time to do it. If there was not a phone shop right there, I would not try it. I went to resupply, I went to the pharmacy to get some disinfectant for my wounds. Couldn't see a phone shop, so I decided, all right, not gonna lose time looking for one. Just left. A really nice ride that day, because you leave Narin and then it's just paved climb, which is not too bad, but not the most scenic. And then gradually the landscape gets even better, even bigger, more spectacular. You get at the bottom of that pretty steep and long climb. There's a checkpoint because you're really close to the Chinese border, so they want to make sure that they control everything, that they know everyone that is going there. Past that checkpoint, had a nice tailwind there. Then it was a matter of going towards checkpoint 2, which is at a lake called Kelsu. The ride to get there is just absolutely magnificent. Was super happy with the timing because I got to checkpoint 2 at 8:30, so basically 10 or 20 minutes after sunset. It was dark. Got my stamp on my brevet card and I could see that I was in second position at that time, and only Justinus was ahead of me and he had gotten to the checkpoint an hour earlier. And I decided that I was not gonna chase him. I was gonna stay in a yurt there. Problem is that, again, I couldn't really sleep. I think maybe it was the altitude. Kelso is at 3,300 meters and just couldn't fall asleep right away. And also in these yurts, it can get pretty cold. So they have a stove and they put dry cow dung, horse shit, sorry about the language, in the stove. The thing about this is that it burns really fast. The yurt gets really hot and then it gradually cools down. And it was too hot in that yurt. I stayed there, I think 2 or maybe 2.5 hours trying to fall asleep. I could not. Jakub and Adrien showed up in the same yurt and they added more cow dung to that stove and it got even hotter. And then I was like, okay, I'm out. Get out of the yurt. And then I proceeded to climb the old Soviet road, a 30% incline through just grass for about an hour and a half. And then you gradually proceed down to get back to the same valley where you were coming from. I think around 3 a.m. I saw like an old abandoned hut for whatever guard checkpoint. And I decided to get some more sleep there. So I slept for a couple of hours in my sleeping bag with my mat. And around 8 a.m. started to be super windy, like a massive headwind, all the way to Torgard, which is a Chinese border checkpoint. And I stopped there. I was running out of food because the last resupply had been in Naren the day before. I was carrying 6 or 7 packets of this. So I actually ate a couple of these, and that's when Justin caught me. I was happy to see him. He's a good friend. I left just, I don't know, a few seconds after he got there. I just changed socks, eaten, and I left to get on that tarmac road. Justin caught me on that tarmac road. We rode together a little bit, past another checkpoint, and then it was 2 really nice climbs to get to Baitov. And we got there around 9:30. I decided to stop there to get a good rest. He decided to keep going. I went to the hotel where I had been 2 years ago. I was greeted by the owner or the manager. He was like, "Oh, hello, Sofiane," which is always nice. I asked them to wake me up at 3 a.m. I really needed that shower. Shower is important, and spending the night in a bed to get proper sleep for pretty much the first time in the race. I left by top around 3 a.m. Enjoyed 5 kilometers of tarmac and then enjoyed nothing because it was a terrible washboarded gravel road all the way to Kazarman, where it was extremely hot. Went to the shop in Kazarman. I borrowed the phone from a woman. I could see on the tracker that Justin was an hour and a half ahead, and Jakub was an hour and a half behind. So it was really tight for the 3 first positions. I left Kazarman packing a ton of liquid because it was really hot. It was 40 degrees. I knew that there were 2 seriously hard climbs there. Before the top of the first climb, I passed Justin, who had gotten ill on that night, that he decided not to stay at the checkpoint. So he was coughing a lot. He was on his mattress just trying to get some rest, just coughing. There was then a village where I could resupply on water. There was well water here. And after that village, it was another major pass, 1,000-meter climb. I did that climb, I felt pretty tired, so I did it not especially fast. Towards the top, I could see that there was a light that was coming closer. And at the top, I stopped to put on some more clothes for the downhill. And that's where Justin showed up after a couple of minutes. And I was happy to see that he had overcome his cough and had been strong enough to climb this pass faster than me. We did that downhill together, and we're in that place that I've only been in the dark, so I don't really know what it's like. But there's people there, there's pavement, there's houses, and you just go through that place, and then you get to the bottom of a really long climb, a 1,200-meter high climb that gets you to CP3 at Lake Songkol. I dropped Justin at some point. I think his cough was getting worse. I'd spent that really good mountain bite off, so the goal was to kind of make my move to try and create a little bit of a gap with both Justin and Jakub. I went a little bit further than the bottom of Moldo Ashu, which is the climb to Songkol. I decided to grab just 2.5 hours of sleep there and then get going. Found a little spot, just got into my bivvy, and there, slept until sunrise. That's the only strategy that I had, since I couldn't set an alarm. The only thing that could wake me up right on time was the sun. And then I climbed Moldo Ashu, which is a beautiful, beautiful climb, but I was super tired and I was super slow. I get to the CP3 in first position, got my stamp from Nelson, got a little bit of breakfast, eggs and crepes and sort of donuts. And then it's a beautiful, beautiful loop. Well, it's not exactly a loop, but you go around the lake, around half of the Lake Songkol. Lake Songkol is one of the most visited places in Kyrgyzstan. Stunning scenery up there at 3,200 meters. It's sort of a crater, whatever. And so you need to climb out. You get the really high speed downhill. A little bit of a hike a bike next to a river. The next big thing is Kegeri. Massive climb, massive climb. Sadly, I got at the bottom of the climb close to dusk. So, I mean, I could enjoy some great views, but then I had to do that climb in the dark. And the top of that climb is very hard because it's just a lot of debris. Several landslides have completely obliterated the road. There's no clear path. You pretty much need to make your own path, choose the right way to get all the way to the top, carrying your bike. Pretty intense and tiring. As I was nearing the top of Kegeri, I could see that there was a bike light there somewhere. Jakub was not far. It was hard to gauge the distance, but it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. My move of cutting back on sleep before CP3 hadn't really worked. Then it's a really, really long downhill to Kegeri village. I managed to stay alert during the off-road part of the downhill. The last, 10K were paved. It got really, really hard for me just to be awake and focused. I tried everything, every trick in the book. It became harder and harder. I managed to still stay safe. It was past midnight in a really small town in Kyrgyzstan, so there's not much happening. I was not in real danger of whatever, like there was no cars. It was an absolute necessity for me to stop and sleep. I was just looking for the right place. And I think around 1 a.m. I found a mosque. Went into that mosque. As it turns out, there was a lot of people sleeping there, probably half a dozen. And I went there. I was like, okay, I badly need to sleep. I will just lie down there and sleep. And whenever I feel like I can get going again, I will get going. And that's exactly what I did. Just lie down on a prayer mat. Hard to gauge, I'm guessing maybe I slept for 2 hours, maybe less, maybe more, but not much less and not much more. Then I was on my way, and I was again hoping that cutting back on sleep would allow me to open up a little bit of a gap with Jakub. I had no way to know if it had worked, because when I left it was 2:30 a.m. and no one was around for me to borrow a phone and check what he was doing, where he was sleeping, whatever. It's what I do, cut back on sleep and try to hold on to that lead. That's always been my strategy, My strategy's never been to ride as hard as possible and then get a good rest and then ride as hard as possible. It was not exactly the home stretch, but the coming day would really decide the fate of the race. I had a terrible headwind going out of Kegeri village and towards the valley of the Shamshi River. Thankfully, it took a left turn to leave that Shamshi Valley and started what is called here the bonus climbs, because you get Kegeri and then you get the final climb, and so whatever is in there is like, bonus, more climbing. These bonus climbs were steep, rideable when you're fit, when you have a certain strength in your legs. So I managed to ride them, but believe me or not, a lot of people will walk during these bonus climbs. I was just like slowly making my way, checking back a few times to see if Jakub was on my tail. And after these bonus climbs, which were really nice actually, it was really beautiful up there, like secret valleys, whatever. Then there was one resupply, and I stopped there. Control car was there with Nelson photographers, and I resupplied. I was in bad need of resupply, and I checked the phone of a local again. I could see that Jakub was only 17 kilometers away despite me cutting back on sleep. And it lit a fire under my ass, and I just like got going and I pushed as hard as I could on the pedals. And also I was trying to be super efficient. I had really struggled during that resupply because they only had like sweet stuff, candy bars, whatever. So I was really happy that I still had 2 packets of Tater Boost. So what I did is, instead of just filling up the packets with water, I actually put the powder in my bottle, and I drank the Tater Boost as sort of a shaker. We went to a place called the Chongkemin Valley. The road was terrible. It was like really hard to make any sort of speed on that road, but thankfully it was a tailwind. So sometimes when the road would get a little bit better, I would be able to, yeah. It was like this gradual uphill where you leave from 1,300 meters all the way to 2,700. And then that's where you start the final boss called Kok Eirik, which is a massive pass of 1,200 meters of ascent. It is a 5-hour hike-a-bike. So many landslides have made the road a complete mess. And the parts that are rideable are extremely steep, so sometimes they're just too steep to ride. I was just happy that I had made it to the bottom of the climb by myself, because then it meant that I had kept Jakub at bay. I waited for the sun to set, because I knew I would see his light. Because believe me, when you spend 5 hours walking to clear 16 kilometers of climbing, it means that you can't really be far away in terms of distance, even if you're far away in terms of time. And yeah, at some point for sure during the night, I could see his light. And even if it's, again, impossible to gauge exactly how far it is, I knew that it was impossible for him to catch me given how far the light seemed to be. And so after 5 hours of hiking this Kok Eirik pass, got to the top, really bumpy downhill all the way to a tarmac road, turn off 19 kilometers of tarmac to Chalpolnata, where we are here. Got to the finish, raised my arms, and it was a third win. Incredible, honestly. Who would have thought that was such a packed start list, just heavy hitters all over. Guys like, oh, of course, Justin had finished third, but Jakub, who had won the race in 2019, Steven Lejarik, who finished fourth, who was the winner of North Cape 4000 race across France, Seb Breuer, who finished fifth, who was the winner of Badland, Josh Ebert, who finished seventh, who was the winner of Transcontinental GB Giro Italy Divide, Adrien Alexis, who finished eighth, winner of Hellenic Mountain Race. Not even to mention guys that had to drop out due to health issues, like James Hayden, winner of Transcontinental, or Angus Young, winner of Highland 550. It was just a bunch of guys that had proven that they could win races, and I managed to finish first, which was honestly just so amazing. During that whole race, even though I kind of took the worst start possible, I had this feeling, it's like, I can say that I was sure that I was gonna win, but I was convinced that I was gonna win. I was just obsessed with the victory. It was the only thing that I could think about. And sometimes when I tried to envision a different scenario, I was unable to do so. My brain refused to envision a scenario where I would not cross the finish line first. And I think in sport like bikepacking, that will to win is crucial, absolutely crucial. And it is something that will make the difference. How far are you willing to go to get that W? And I was willing to go all the way and push as hard as I can and cut back on sleep as much as I could. It worked, and it's an amazing feeling to win it for a third time and to be ahead of so many really, really strong athletes. That was my story of the 2023 Silk Road Mountain Race. I hope you liked it. There will be an actual little film about the race, because I had my GoPro and I shot footage during the race. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. If you want, you can like and subscribe. And if you can't guess, this is shot just a couple days after the finish, and I am just smashed. I am exhausted. So maybe it's why it's a little bit chaotic video, but I'm sure that Fanny will do a great job editing it and it won't even show. Cheers, bye.